Welcome to another Terrific Tips episode. Why Terrific Tips? Well, because I'm Terry, your host, and you can't spell terrific without Terry. And for those of you that have never heard that before, I know you're laughing right now, but I know a lot of my audience has heard me say that a couple of times. I'm so grateful that you took the time to join us today, and I want to introduce you to a new friend of mine. I met this gentleman through one of our other podcast guests, which I'm very thankful for the referral. And so my guest today is really on a mission to inspire leaders and their organizations to put more love and care into being of service. Isn't that beautiful? That's just like, I read that line and was like, yes, we need more of that in the world. It is so exciting. So Marc Haine is an employee and customer experience designer. He's a professional speaker and actor and the author of his now released book, Lights, Camera, Action, Business Operational Experience Through the Lens of Live Theater. This is so much fun. I can't wait for him to tell you a little bit more about that book too. He is also the host of a weekly video podcast, Marc Haine Live, which can be seen on YouTube at marchainelive.com. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Marc Haine. Marc, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it sounds so nice when it rolls off your tongue.
Right? It's cool too when you have people on the show and they send you over their bio and they just kind of haphazardly put it together. And then you read it and afterwards they're like, whoa, I've really done all of that? Yes. Yes, you have.
Well, so and it just goes forward in my belief system that all of us have capacities and we can't necessarily see our capacities because we're too close to it, right? And so when you write it out and somebody reads it, it's like, wow, gosh darn it, I am special.
You are, and we all are. We all have special, unique abilities. We just have to give ourselves credit and grace to see it and to receive it when somebody points it out to us. So,
absolutely.
Very good. So why are you so passionate about helping people become passionate about being of service? It's such a great passion.
And it's such a great question because, so I grew up, I was a child of the 70s. Well, I was born in the 60s, but I got into the workforce in the late 70s. And it was a time where, bosses were ruling the roost. It was like, Marc, if I want your opinion, I'll tell you what it is. And it was, don't ask, if I tell you to jump, don't ask me why, ask me how high. Like really, there was no discussion, no way of being able to kind of get in your influence out. They hired you for your hands. You were there to do the work. Yeah. And as we've evolved and as we've kind of manifested the human side of business, we're realizing now that we have the best businesses not only get the hands, but they get the heart and they get the minds of their employees. And in order to get the best out of that, we need absolutely to be kicking in and saying, we need to lead with love and kindness first. We have to be empathic and we have to show a level of emotional intelligence that we understand where people have been. And so that's really kind of the what drove me to write my book, because my book is all about it's all about experiences. And then as I wrote my book, I realized, we talk so much about employee experiences, customer experiences. What the heck? What about employee experiences? Why aren't we talking about that?
Yeah. And if we keep in mind too, that our employees are our first line of customer, right? So if we don't keep our employees happy, then are they actually going to be keeping our customers happy? Like if you're an organization that has a lot of turnover in your employees, you probably have a lot of turnover with your customers too. And you just don't realize it. It's easy to ignore that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the first kind of lead measures to your customer turnover. You take a look at internally and say, what is my employee turnover? Because employees, to turn over employees is so expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And when you think about when you lose somebody, a key person, now keep in mind that if you have a long-term employee, you're losing their capacity, but you're also losing their knowledge.
Mm.
Right? So somebody who's been with your business for 5, 6, 7, 8 years who drops off, you're losing all the routines that they've formed over the years. You're losing all their standard operating procedures and so on. And you're starting basically from scratch. And the cost to your business when that happens is just astronomical.
Yeah.
And I think the current figure that I've seen is employee turnover will cost you anywhere between 180 and 300% of the annual wage of that employee.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So imagine three times the cost, the annual cost of that one employee. And that's what it's costing you to replace them. And that cost is all derivative. It's not just the time it took you to post, schedule, interview, get them up and trained and so on. It's also what is the cost to being ineffective because now you're down a body. What's the cost that the customer now is going to be dealing with a brand new employee who doesn't have all the answers and who's going to look at a customer and go, oh, I'll have to get right back to you.
Let me go find the answer to that question.
Exactly.
I'll be right back. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's so true. So I imagine there was a pretty interesting experience that kind of led you to some of these realizations. Are there any you might be able to share with us that kind of led you to the realization that we need to focus more on our employees and how we start doing that and what that process maybe looks like?
Yeah. So my background is hospitality. I've been in hospitality for years and years and years. And I've been hired more times. I was hired to turn around brands.
Mm.
And so I would get contracted by a hotel who's been around for 20 years and they're in a community where they've had no competition. And now that we hit, the new millennium, they start getting panicky because now they're getting surrounded by all these big brands and nothing they do seems to make a difference. And they need to shake up the way that they do things. And so I would go in and I would first and foremost take a look at what was their culture looking like. I would do a property assessment with them. I would go through and I'd ask questions that they never heard before, which was, how do you want to feel about your business 5 years from now? How do you want your
Ooh,
customers to feel about your business 5 years from now? Even deeper, how would you like your employees to feel about your business 5 years from now?
I
And,
love
the
that.
minute you start talking about that aspect of it, it changes the reality of what are you doing? What are you doing inside your business to make that happen?
Mm.
And it creates a kind of a new way of being able to look at a business than just from the day-to-day minutia of whatever the challenges are, who called in sick, what customers complained, and so on. You start looking and go, wait a second, how my customers feel or my employees feel or how I feel about my business is really important. And so the book is actually, so I'll just, if you don't mind, jump into how I got to the book, because the
Yeah.
book was really interesting. So after 35 years in hospitality, doing this work where I go in and I change businesses, back in 2017, I had an employee walk into my office. Well, it was a coworker, sorry. Walk into my office and she says, Marc, do you act? And so I looked up at her and I very coyly said, well, sometimes I act silly, sometimes I act foolish, but most times I act immature. And she goes, no, 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 no. She goes, I'm part of this community theater group and we have a play and you'd be this one character. And I had never acted before. And she says, would you try it? And so I thought, okay, let's give it a try.
Why
And
not?
so I tried out for it. I got the role, having never acted before. I was so lucky because the whole team was so supportive. They'd say things like, "Okay, tomorrow we're going to do blocking," and I'm like, what's blocking?"
What? Yeah,
Right?
right. What is
And
that?
and
Yeah.
what is that, right? And so we did. So we were doing a farce, and to tell you the honest truth, after rehearsing for 3.5 months, over and over and over again, whatever was funny about the script was no longer funny. Honest to goodness, it was like you're going through it. Did I remember my line? And by the time we were done, it wasn't funny until we got on stage
You
and
beat
we got in front of a
that punchline
live.
to death, right? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, do you ever? Do you ever? And it's like, okay, I have to say that stupid little punchline. But here, all of a sudden, we're in front of 250 people for a dinner theater,
Mm.
and you hear this laughter coming out of the dark because you got lights on, you can't really see the audience. And the laughter just floods the stage. And you realize that the stuff that used to be funny was no longer funny is now funny again. But even bits that you didn't even know were funny, people were laughing at. And I thought, we're really making a difference. If just for a short little while, over the course of this 2 hours, people are having a good time because of what we're doing. And I was so excited after opening night. I came in like 2 hours early the next day for the next show. And I sat on I literally walked into the venue, turned on the lights, and seeing the lights just flood the stage with this mock villa, lighting up, and it kind of was goosebumpy, right? And I stood up on stage and I sat on the couch that was on the stage and I looked over the room. Now you have to think about this for a second. We're a volunteer group. So we had to set up all the tables. We had to literally roll them into place, set up all the chairs, tables, all the tablecloths. We had to do all the place settings. We had to coordinate the caterer. We had to coordinate all our volunteers. We had to come in the Sunday before the show to build the stage and put up the walls and set up everything. And I sat on the stage and I thought, if businesses put this much effort into their business that we did for 6 shows, they'd be stellar. Like, I mean, they would just wow their customers. And that was the basis of Lights, Camera, Action.
Wow. And that's a lot of work. That's a tremendous amount of care to think of every detail like that as a volunteer. You guys aren't getting paid for this. It's not even an exposure opportunity for your business. It's just fun. And you had to think about all of these moving parts and be able to pull it all off seamlessly. Yeah. If businesses did put that kind of care into their business, we would all be rock stars.
Yeah. And that was the basis. I was sitting on that couch that I realized, that all my experience in the 35 years dealing with hospitality, restaurants, casinos, going in and rebranding and fixing things so that they work better, so we're able to fulfill the customer experience expectation. And I thought, you know what, this is that amalgamation right there. I sat on that couch looking over this empty room thinking, this is what I've been doing for 35 years. And how come I've never thought of it as putting on a show?
Gosh.
Yeah.
And that's such a revelation, like going through that and seeing how that kind of care plays out in the relationships that you have with your fellow actors. And if you really do relate it back to business, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, my fellow actors are actually my coworkers, my employees, my assistants, right? Yes. They're my team. These are my fellow actors. So when you were doing this show, did you find like certain techniques were more effective in helping to motivate your cohort, your team that was helping you to put on this show?
Well, one of the things that when you get a small troop of people together to be able, like, I truly believe that if you can get a small, passionate group of people together, they can achieve miracles. Like, it's amazing what people can do. And so coming in my background, growing up in business from the 70s on, and kind of literally, I was a dishwasher, I was a cook, I was a chef, I was a manager, right. And having kind of taken that progression, I've seen really good leaders and I've seen really, really bad leaders. And so I've been lucky.
Sure you have.
I've been really lucky to have leaders who yelled and screamed and cursed at me as it gave me a benchmark of who I didn't want to be as a leader.
They say that even our bad leaders actually are really good leaders because they teach us what not to do.
Exactly. And when you know not what to do, when you know how it felt to get that level of disrespect while you were working, or that level of, where you just feel insignificant and worthless, you say, if I'm going to be a leader, I'm never going to make people feel that way. And, something is very simple as, as a leader, somebody comes into your office and they have a problem. And I remember somebody came in and they were asking me a question, and I was literally looking up and going, yeah. And I'm typing away on my computer as they're talking to me. And then I stopped myself and I thought, wait a second, this poor person's got a problem. And all I'm thinking about is what's on my screen. And so that at that point, I closed my computer and I realized his problem has to be as important to me as he is to me, as one of my team members. And so when we came together, the one, I think, biggest aspect about a theater troupe versus an employee-employer relationship is this idea that as a troupe, you know, we're always talking, we're always communicating, we're out for we have a central goal, and that is to create a really great experience. And all too often, if you go into a business, does the employee understand what the goal is? Because I think as long as everybody's on the same page, everybody's working towards that. Go to Disney, right? And Disney is brilliant at this. Like, you will never, ever see Snow White out front smoking a cigarette.
No, you won't.
Right? They have a place to do that. And you're never going to ever have Snow White coming back from a cigarette break, you know, just smelling of cigarettes or whatever. You're never going to see that.
No.
Right. But yet in businesses, we have no problem with, you know, employees standing up front smoking or at the back smoking, or you see in a restaurant, you see at the server station, a bunch of servers are going at it behind the thing, or the chef is yelling across, you know, the pass through, and you see all these things. And it's like, do you realize that that is not part of the show? That would be akin to, in the middle of our performance, the director running on stage going, "What do you guys think you're doing? You know your lines, now do it properly," and then walking off the stage, right? I mean, it's absurd, but yet we do this in business. You see it happen time and time and time and time again.
And it's probably because we just don't even think about it. Like, we just are in our own space that we don't even think about, how does this look from the external perspective? Or how am I making this person feel by doing this in front of these other people? And so somebody had told me once, you praise publicly and you correct privately. And you do that so that way you don't ever embarrass somebody. You're not that person who's putting on this extravagant, terrible show accidentally. You're now somebody who's only putting on this extravagant, amazing, beautiful show. And anything that needs to be corrected can be corrected in private. Absolutely. So that's not a public situation. And that's really interesting. Yeah. Because we don't.
And I mean, I think we've all seen it. We've all seen it where you've been in a business and you see the manager come out and give the employee heck, and you think, that's just not right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and there's lots of studies been done on civility in the workplace. Like, even if you're, say you're in an office with 20 cubicles and the boss comes in and gives one person heck, it affects the performance of the 19 other people who witnessed it.
It does.
Even though it had nothing to do with it. All of a sudden, everybody's performance has been affected by it.
Well, it affects morale too. Like, when you fire somebody, now you have a morale issue inside of the team, because now everybody's walking around on eggshells, afraid that they're going to be the one that gets axed next, right? Because if you do the private corrections, then most people in your team don't even realize there was something wrong, or that person was not upholding what they were supposed to be doing. So all of a sudden you have Bob down the way who, you know, Bob has been here forever and now Bob's not here anymore and we don't know why. And you get this canned line that says, well, he's decided to move on. We wish him well in his future endeavors. What the heck does that mean? Do you think that helps morale? That doesn't help morale, right? Is there
not at all?
Is there a better way to deal with that? Like, what's the best way to deal with, okay, I have this employee and I need to let them go. How do I keep my morale up?
So part of the challenge, I think, that a lot of leaders have is the fact that they don't properly outline expectations. Like, I abhorred the annual performance review. The annual performance review, I mean, literally, so as a leader, you're given a form to fill out. Now, I've had really lazy managers who've received the form from HR, say, okay, Steve, you got to get your staff, you got to evaluate your staff. And so what Steve does then is he comes to me and he says, Marc, he says, it's annual review time. Here's your form, fill it out and bring it back to me.
Right.
And it's like, well, and then it says, but it even says on there, right? It's talking to the leader about this employee. How would you rate the employee's performance? And so I'm reading this and going, well, wait a second, is this for me to do or is him to do?
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this idea of, okay, I have to do my self-evaluation, then I have to hand it into him. He's going to go through it. He's going to tell me where I'm wrong. He's then going to put me on a scale, rating me from 1 to 5. And the issue that I had more than anything else was when I saw in like the point system, I would see something like dresses professionally, 1 to 5. Performance of duties, 1 to 5. And I thought, well, wait a second. The thing
Yeah.
that I do every single day, that I get paid to do, that I bring my capacity, my heart, my brains into, you're rating me on one category, 1 to 5, the same at the same level as whether or not I adhere to dress code.
Right.
And I thought, oh, absolutely. Like, so out of the whole thing, only one question has to deal with my performance. The rest is it's interpersonal skills. It's how I dress. Am I late for, do I come in on time?
Yeah.
But only one was based performance. And so out of the scale that, added up to, I don't know, 30 points or 35 points, only one of them had to do with performance. And I thought there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to be a
Right.
better way than getting together once a year with your manager. He's going to be ticking a box. And then when you question something like, okay, so why are you giving me a 4 and not a 5 on that? And he looks at you, goes, because nobody's perfect. So I can't give you a 5 because nobody's perfect. Everybody needs improvement.
I've
Okay,
gotten
so
that
how can I
answer.
improve? Well, I'm not really sure, but I know you're not perfect.
Right.
And it's like, really? That's how you're going to evaluate me? Right? So,
Right.
I personally think a better way is to have regular recurring coaching sessions with employees. And I think, the leaders have that with their managers. The managers have that with their supervisors. The supervisors have that with the front end or the front facing employees. I think if we can act more like coaches to sure that people understands what is the vision, what's the mission of where we're going. Are we all on the same page? Are we all excited that we're going in this direction?
Right.
And then once you have that buy-in, then you sit down and you say, okay, Steve, now let's sit down and talk a little bit about what you need in order to be successful. What do you need as a leader? What do you need from the organization? How can we help you grow? And we're in a time now where people don't stay in jobs for 30 years anymore. People stay
Right.
in jobs 2, 3, 5 years,
Mhm.
and then they move on.
Mhm.
So my big question to any employer is, what have you done in the last 2 years that has helped your employees grow?
That's
What
a
is it
good
you're doing about
question.
that?
And it actually
Oh,
relates
you're
to,
muted.
oh, am I muted?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
sorry. No, it's me.
It's you. Okay. I was
It's I.
saying that it actually relates to a conversation that I was having earlier this morning about psychological safety. So, if we're in a relationship in our office, in our business, where it's not safe to ask for help, or it's perceived as weakness if you ask for help, or if it's perceived as you're less than if you are somebody who's failing or struggling, instead of providing that support, or instead of saying, hey, how can I help you? Right? What can I do to help you be more successful? We actually berate, belittle, or whatever the person who's struggling. Well, now they're going to be less likely to ask for help in the future, which then actually damages the company from a whole, because not only is that person feeling that way, but like we talked about a minute ago with morale, it has this expanding effect. So when the employees see other employees treat somebody that way, they also in the back of their mind realize, oh, so this is how we deal with people who have questions. Okay. So don't ever have any questions. Figure it out, right? And that's not really the mentality that you want to have. So I love the idea of having regular meetings, but is there something that a manager or a supervisor needs to do to help that subordinate feel comfortable or feel safe about being able to say, you know what, you really could help me. Could we do something like this instead? So is there maybe a step in between the having the performance reviews be more like coaching? What does that kind of look like in terms of making it a safe zone for that employee to feel what they need to feel, to ask what they need to ask?
So that's a really great question. And on my blogcast, I actually have one episode that I called "Have the Guts to Lead." And there's another one that I talk about how to train, don't create managers, create leaders. And one of the things that really shocked when I would go into a new property, I would go face to face with the employees, and right away, it's a new face coming in to a business, and all of a sudden it creates all this uncertainty. And when I walked into, for instance, I was a general manager of a hotel. I went in to help this hotel out, and the very first day that I was there, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I went by the restaurant to make myself a cup of tea, and they were swamped. Like they were running like chickens without a head. You could feel the stress. And I went up to so it's like, gosh, I have to help. I can't just leave them like this. So as the server's running past me, I say, "Oh, can you tell me where the rags are?" And she goes, "They're over there." Okay. And she comes running back again. I said, "Could you tell me where the trays are?" And she's like, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, you look really busy. I'd like to help. I'll bust some tables for you." She goes, "Well, that's a first." And she gives me a tray and then sets me loose. And then afterwards, we're able to talk about it, but understanding that she's stressed, I'm not going to take it personally.
Right.
So right off the get-go, taking this attitude that I'm here to help you, right? It shows. It's not just words, it shows. You're taking your energy to help them. The other thing that always shocks people when they come up to me and go, "But Marc, we have this problem. What should I do?" And I look at them and say, "I don't know. What do you think?" And they go, "But you're the boss." And I said, "Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I have all the answers." And you should see people's face almost like lose blood circulation. They just go white. And they're like, "What?"
What?
And so,
Yeah. We're not used to hearing that.
No. And so here's the thing is, are you the manager with all the answers? Because if you are, that means you probably micromanage everything. Right? And the minute you start micromanaging anything, don't expect people to take the initiative, because they're going to wait for you for the solutions. And so one of the things that I think the biggest difference between a manager and a leader is that between the two of them, the leader has humility. The leader knows that the business is not about them. The leader knows that they don't have all the answers. And so being able to go up to, in this particular case where, we had a very strong food and beverage, and to sit down with the dishwasher, and say, "What can we do to make your life easier? Like, what can we do so that you're happier, that you're," and all of a sudden, and then the ideas start coming out.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to the owner, and the owner said, "I understand you sat down with the dishwasher to do some strategy thinking." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, what the heck did a dishwasher tell you? Because the only thing a dishwasher knows is when he's going to get paid and when is his next smoke break." And I thought, that is the difference between a manager and a leader.
Yes.
Right.
And it's also the difference of caring about the people that are in your employ too, because I feel like by asking the question, by opening up that conversation, by saying, "Hey, I might be the leader of this company, but that doesn't mean I know where the heck, like what the best answer is here. I know where we want to go because I have vision, and that's why I'm the leader and you're not. But how we get there, I don't have to have the answer to that question. Somebody else maybe has a good idea that can help us get there." And being able to be humble, to be open to what that opportunity is. So I think you're right. It does come down to having the right energy, right? It does come down to saying, "Look, you are stressed. You're having a bad day. I get it. What can I do to help you? I'm here to help you. We can talk about what's going on after the fact to make this not be a problem for you in the future. But let's get through what we're in right now and we'll figure out the next steps." But we got to get through whatever we're in and not taking it personally. That's such a good tip too. Like, just don't take it personal. If somebody's in their own stuff, let them be in their own stuff, still kill them with kindness, you attract more flies with honey. We've all heard these sayings our whole life,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you don't really know what it means until you're in this situation. And then you're like, oh, that's when I need to apply that one.
And some people would look at that story and go, boss, he shouldn't talk to you that way. And trust me, I have had cook, like I had a situation where on a Sunday, a cook was all by himself getting absolutely slammed. And I went into to him and I said, is there anything I could do to help? And he ignored me. Is there anything I could do to help? And he ignored me. And then finally, I just put on an apron. I went behind the line and I started cooking with him. And he didn't realize I knew how to cook. Because he's, just before I jumped behind the line, he said, if you could cook, then you could help me. But otherwise, stay out of my way. And again, here's a guy who's just super stressed. And here's an interesting thing about humanity. Somewhere along the way, when we grew up, we stopped admitting that our feelings get hurt.
Interesting.
Think about when people are mad about something. And more times than not, they're mad that they got disrespected. They're mad that somebody did something to them. They're mad that somebody's got a perk that they didn't get.
Right.
Ultimately, it boils down to them having their feelings hurt. And the minute that you can recognize that, the minute you can recognize that this person is feeling out of place because somewhere along the way, something is not validating them and that their feelings are hurt, then you're able to step in and help with the issue.
Gotcha.
And sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's hands-on, sometimes it is just whatever support they can get. But acknowledging that people's feelings get hurt gives you a completely different outcome of how you react to situations. Instead of me getting all my knickers in a twist, because I don't like getting my knickers in a twist. It hurts when your knickers are in a twist. I realize this person has a need, and them lashing out to me is no different than a 4-year-old lashing out to their parents going, I don't love you anymore. They're lashing out. They're trying to communicate a frustration and they don't know how to verbalize it. And so understanding that the only reason why they're lashing is because their feelings are hurt in some form or fashion gives you the opportunity, A, not to take it personally, and B, to step in and help do something. But in every single circumstance where that has happened, where somebody has quote unquote disrespected me as a leader, they have always come back without any prompting to apologize. So in the case of the chef, the cook, he came back to me like after the rush was over and everything else. He came into my doorway of my office and he goes, Marc, he goes, I want to apologize. He says, I didn't know you could do what you could do. And so then we were able to have a discussion about how he can ask for help without feeling bad about it. And we were able to coach that through so that we had a really good working relationship.
So it also comes down to, we all have our own unique histories, right? So we get hurt by different things that happen by different bosses or employees that we've had in the past. And instead of putting those bags down, we actually carry them along with us everywhere we go. And then when somebody else is doing a pattern of behavior that's similar to that last situation that we're still holding that bag for, now instead of reacting like a sane, healthy human being, we're going to react as though we're somebody with a chip on our shoulder because we've already lived in this situation. We're not doing that again, right? I'm not doing that again. So you put your foot down and then it kind of spirals. It gets really big and out of control in a really fast way. Instead of saying, you know what? Yeah, that situation happened. What did I learn from it? What can I do in the future to make it better? And now look at that. I can put the bag down. Because now I can also recognize that the new person standing in front of me is not the same person that did that to me before. This is a new person who has their own life story and their own thing that's going on. And now we can come to this kind of understanding of, I don't really understand you, and that's okay. And I want to. So how can we communicate? How can we find that common language so that we can understand each other, so that we can help each other and reduce that stress? Beautiful.
Yeah. But like you said, just in that one example, Terry, that shows me that you're a person with empathy and that you're a person with humility to be able to ask that question.
Thank you.
Because those managers who fly off the handle because somebody misbehaved or somebody said something to them and hurt their feelings, those people are the ones who are lacking the humility, because their first response is, I'm the manager, you can't talk to me that way. And the only time a person ever says, you have to listen to me because I'm your manager, is when they have lost all control and they're trying desperately to grab that control back.
It's a scarcity mindset. You're absolutely right. It totally comes out of a scarcity mindset. Every time you come across somebody who's being overly aggressive or seems to be trying to find a way to throw everybody else under the bus, it's because they're scared that they are not performing at the level that they know they should be performing at in order for their job to have stability. And so they're feeling insecure. And when we feel insecure, just like an old dog will attack a young dog, not because it wants to attack the young dog, but because it feels insecure about its place in the pack, humans do it too. We do the same thing.
And this takes us right back to our very opening comment.
It does.
About this idea of capacity. Like, like I am really pretty choked at adults, because as a kid growing up, I thought adults had all the answers. And now that I'm an adult, I realize that was all a lie. And that we all suffer imposter syndrome. We all don't want to be found out for our weaknesses. We all, people say, oh, Marc, you're such a good speaker. They don't realize that even as a professional speaker, I stress over what I'm going to say. I stress over what my performance is going to be like. As an actor, before, I have my hand on the doorway ready to step on stage for my very first line. And I get that one thing of doubt in my heart that says, don't mess up, buddy, don't mess up, right? You have this, and it's normal. And I don't care who you are, whether you're the janitor in a hotel, whether you are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization. Every day you work up and you second guess yourself.
Yeah.
Every single day. And it's normal and it's human to do so.
Do you have a tip of something that's helped you overcome that stage fright, overcome that self-doubt or that imposter syndrome that you explained?
Yeah. So, we're constantly having this idea of like negative self-talk. I don't know if I can do this and so on. And my biggest recommendation would be find a time when you felt like that before. Mm-hmm. Look back and you think, when did you feel that you felt that, but were successful? And realize that you telling yourself this is just a story. It is just a narrative, because you have in your brain, you have this little bitty lizard brain that's there to protect you in case a saber-toothed tiger comes out and jumps on you. And since that's never now an issue, that lizard brain kicks in and creates this fear of fight or flight or fright, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that you recognize the fact that, you might have this self-doubt, but you've been in this position before. You've mm-hmm. been here before. And sometimes you've done something and you failed. And you go, what happens if I fail again? And my question is always, what happens if you do? So what? I started my podcast, my video podcast live. I decided I'm going to do this live. I'm just going to do it. And I realized if you watch my very first episode, it's me in front of my green screen. I was determined I was going to do this. And I thought, nothing's going to keep me from doing this. The show must go on. And everything failed. All my backgrounds failed. My lighting failed. And I literally sat in front of my green screen doing my 20-minute opening segment, my very first podcast of my thing. And I thought, and people were going, but what happens if you fail? And it's like, so what if I fail? It's human to fail. The one thing that every time you fail, you learn something. You learn something new. And there's this whole big theory about failing forward, which I think we need to grasp. We need to understand that part of you didn't learn to ride a bike the first time you got on it. You fell a couple of times. Right. And it was each time getting back on and trying again, falling again. And each time you learn something new. Right.
And learning is a process. We have to fail. We have to find new ways to fail so that we can learn from those failures. And you're absolutely right. My first iteration of the podcast was a couple of versions of the podcast ago. They still exist out on YouTube. I don't encourage you to go find them. They're not very good. But I failed. I failed twice before I landed on a podcast concept that could actually gain some traction and grow and be everything I knew a podcast could be, everything I wanted the podcast to be. But I put some strange restrictions on myself and limitations on myself when I first started doing it. And that's why it failed. Instead of saying, this could be whatever it's going to be, it took COVID happening for me to say, you know what? I could just create a platform for business owners to talk about business. It doesn't have to be nonprofits. It doesn't have to only be for profits. It doesn't have to only be in the marketing world. It doesn't have to be anything except a platform for people to come together, have awesome conversations, teach somebody something based off of the pain that they've had, so that we can together learn to avoid those pains. Not learn to avoid the failure, learn to avoid the pain, right? Because there's different failures that we're going to have, but we don't have to have the pain associated with those failures. We do need the failures, though. Yeah.
If you're going to grow, you're going to need to have the failures. It's the only way that you know that you've taken a chance and that you're working outside your comfort zone. And if you're not a little bit afraid, like imagine the very first time that you got hired for a brand new job and you were excited, but you also had that fear. What happens if I don't fail? What happens if I fail? What happens if I make mistakes? What happens if they get mad at me? And we go through this, but it doesn't take away the excitement that this is your first day at work, that this is something brand new. And where we start falling down is when we get into this mode of complacency, where you're no longer scared about how you're performing. You go in every day, you know that you're supposed to put the widget on the shirt goes to the next person, you take the next shirt, put a widget on the shirt, and you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, where's the growth? Where's the development? And I truly believe that nobody wants to be in the same position next year as they are right today. Yeah. Everybody wants to evolve. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants a different reality. This is why lotteries are so successful. It's because everybody wants the magic button if they could, that everything's going to be better next. Right?
Where's the easy button? There isn't.
Where's the easy button? Yeah, it's easy button. Where's the easy button?
No easy button. No easy
button. The easiest button is to just do it. Just shut up and just do it.
Do it. Yeah. Marc, this has been absolutely amazing. And I know we can keep talking for a while because we just have some great synergy. But what's going to be the best way for my audience to get in touch with you? Because I know they want to get that book.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. marchaine.com. That's MARC Haine. It's spelled the French way. MARC. And I have to look at my camera back. MARCHaine.com. And you go and you just go to Lights, Camera, Action. It's right there on the bottom. Talks a little bit about what's in the book, the whole basis of the book. And it's this idea of using the lens of live theater to look at your business so that each and every day when you open up your doors, you're putting on a show.
Yes. And make it magical. This has been amazing, Marc. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
If there was one thing you wish you knew when you first started, what would it be?
It would be that we don't have all the answers. Because again, like I said earlier before, I was really mad at adults because I always thought as a kid, all the adults had all the answers. And so I assumed at some point that I would have all this wisdom and that I knew what the heck I was doing each and every day. And the reality is because I don't like complacency, one of my values is uncompromising transformation. It's this idea of staying uncomfortable. So it's all growth centered, but realizing that today is going to be different from tomorrow, and tomorrow is going to be different from the day after that. And so every day you get out of bed, be grateful for what you have. Set up when you get up first thing in the morning, get up and just say 3 things you're grateful for before you do anything else. 3 things that you're grateful for. And I trust me, you'll wake up with a different mindset because I figure there's 2 people in the world, those that get up in the morning and go, oh, God, morning, and those who wake up in the morning and go, good morning, God.
That's so good. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That is so good. And you're right. There are those 2 people in the world. So I'm going to leave our audience with this question. Which person are you? Are you the get up in the morning and say, oh God, it's morning? Or are you the type of person that gets up and says, oh, thank God it's morning?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, everybody.